This program is brought to you by the partners of A Rood Awakening International. Help others find truth. Support A Rood Awakening International today.
Ask most people when the story of Passover begins, and they might say the escape from Egypt, or maybe even the crucifixion. Well, both are right, but the foundations of Passover actually begin a lot further back in history. The path to freedom that eventually led up to Passover, with Pharaoh, Egypt, Moses, and 10 plagues and all that, actually started way back in the time of Noah's Ark. And tonight, you are going to hear the whole story of Passover with Michael Rood. We're doing this tonight because it's just 1 week away from our own Passover celebration here in Charlotte, and because it's the end of the sixth day. The sun is set, and this is Shabbat Night Live!
Be a great show tonight.
It will be.
Stand by, studio. 30 seconds.
Thank you. One minute to air, Michael.
Oh, thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Ellie.
Shabbat Shalom, Torah fans. Welcome to Shabbat Night Live with Michael Rood. We are, guess what, 1 week from Passover. Our Passover extravaganza in Concord, North Carolina. It's Passover Priests and Kings, renewing the broken blood covenant. Right there is what the DVD set is going to look like. And tonight, Michael Rood is going to lay down the foundations of Passover for you that go all the way back to the time of Noah. Yes, all the way back to Noah. Tonight's teaching is Passover, the Path to Freedom. Michael actually taught this a few years ago. So if you like what you see tonight on Shabbat Night Live, you can get the entire 5 DVD set to keep. In fact, Michael considers this such a foundational teaching that it's also part of his Foundations in the Torah series, and he calls this Torah 201. Now, speaking of numbers, let's see where we are on the astronomically and agriculturally corrected biblical Hebrew calendar. The renewed moon was seen earlier this week, so that means Passover is right around the corner. Today is the first Shabbat of the month of the Aviv on our brand new calendar. Again, more information on that calendar at the calendar page, roodawakening.tv/2018 calendar. Now, Passover is next week, and we've got all the details with my co-host tonight. Please welcome the Director of Ministry Development for A Rood Awakening International, Annie Reed.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, Annie. 1 week to Passover.
That's right. And we're excited to celebrate with you, whether you're coming to Charlotte, North Carolina, or we're celebrating with you at home.
Right.
You can actually watch our Passover event from your couch at your home the entire weekend, actually. So
yes, for $79 and $99, 2 different packages.
Yes, so for $79, you get the opportunity to download every single teaching that you see and watch online all weekend long, or for a donation of $99, you will get the DVD set along with the teaching.
Right, and you get 2 bonus discs, 2 events that are not going to be on the DVD because we had to start earlier this year. Lots going on. And so myself, I'm doing a presentation on health earlier on the Friday, and Matthew Hall is actually doing something on how to start an Aviv fellowship. So both of those are not going to be broadcast, but they will be on the DVD set. And as Annie mentioned, it's only $20 more and you get the whole shebang. So.
Yes, so please join us for Passover. We look forward to spending the weekend with you. We have some great guests, Perry Stone, Bo Cloud, Chris Knight, Joel Richardson, and of course, Michael Rood is going to do the Seder. It's a teaching that he has not done before. He's doing it very differently than he has in the past.
Right, and it's sort of we're learning just as as Michael is putting it together, some details of how this Passover is going to be even more grand than we thought it was, because he is going to explain, as we mentioned before, we're going to have a replica there of the Solomon's Temple and how the columns worked and all that kind of thing, as detailed in The Secret of Solomon's Temple. Mm-hmm. And so that's going to be great in itself. And we thought that he was going to do that during the Seder. Well, he's got something special planned for the Seder as well, and he's actually going to be doing this teaching on Shabbat Night Live.
That's right. So you don't want to miss next week's Shabbat Night Live. Join us. It's going to be exceptional. Now, this in particular, you do have to watch online. So if you're watching us on television, whether it's Angel One or Uplift or any other channel, please visit aroodawakening.tv Friday evening to watch that. You'll have to watch it live in order to get the real presentation.
Right, because for our folks watching on satellite television, we have to send the programs a week or two in advance, and they're not going to play a live event. So you will still get something special because we are going to broadcast last year's Passover on the networks. So if you're watching there, you can still see something great if you don't have access to internet or whatever. So no matter what, next weekend is going to be great. And PassoverCharlotte.com is where you can get all the details. Annie, I'm not sure if there's any tickets left at this point. But
please check in with us.
Well, you can check in with us. That's right.
You never know. We have cancellations and such. We don't want you to miss the opportunity to be here in person. But we certainly want you to check in first and foremost. We try not to do tickets at the door too often, simply because we have to give the hotel numbers well in advance. They expect it from us a few weeks prior to. So we encourage you to do it in advance, even if you have some slight suspicion that you might not be able to attend. But again, just call us at 888-766-3610 if there is anything.
Okay. And if there's a will, there's a way, and Annie will make it happen for you.
That's right. Believe me, I'm the one that I will maneuver whatever I have to make it happen.
Yes. Now, Bill Cloud, of course, Annie, I think you mentioned that Bill is one of our speakers at Passover.
Yes.
And we are getting so many positive comments about his special guest teaching for last month's Love Gift, which was on Esau, and for this month. He's doing sort of a two-part series, and next month Michael is coming back, but for this month, the Love Gift is Jacob, the hand and the heel. It's the second Love Gift teaching in a row for Bill Cloud. Like I said, Michael returns next month with something of his own, but this series on Jacob and Esau is really timely for what's going on in our world. Because he relates Jacob and Esau to first of all, the battle that goes on within us, and also the battle that's going on just literally from Esau's descendants versus Jacob's descendants in our world, the things that we see in the Middle East news. And so this is a really great teaching about Jacob, the hand and the heel. What's that all about? Well, it's about how, remember when Esau was born, Jacob was close behind, holding Esau's heel, and everybody says that's because Jacob was always looking to trip up Esau. Well, maybe not the case. Bill says that his hand was up for a different reason, and I'm not going to give it away. You have to see it in the teaching. It makes a lot of sense, and it's a great teaching. That's
right. So for your donation of $50 or more, you only have a few days left to receive this teaching. And we also had a lot of compliments on the CD from Andrew Hodkinson. People love his music. He's an exceptional singer, but this particular CD set in itself has beautiful music. So you'll get the CD. You'll also receive a replica of the Dead Sea Scrolls. It comes in this beautiful clay pot, and then it comes with a photocopy of Isaiah, parts of Isaiah, one of the scrolls that was found within the Dead Sea Scrolls. And all of this is for a donation of $100 or more. So this is, again, just a few days left to receive both the teaching and the extra gifts. You don't want to miss out. Like Michael said, it's a very timely teaching that he stepped aside to have Bill teach this in particular for us, because he believes it is for here and now. Right, and especially if you received last month's Love Gift with Bill's first teaching on Esau, you want to get Jacob, because it's like the sequel, and it's the whole story. You get to the whole thing rounded out, and it's just it's a great teaching to have. Now, go ahead, Annie. Well, I was going to share. So now Passover, we want to go over a few things, because we know that we have a lot of new people that are joining A Rude Awakening that are just starting this walk, and we just want to clarify a few things about these high holy days that are coming around the corner, especially since we're getting into the spring feast time. So one thing is that Passover is not a high holy day, correct? Correct, yeah. It was, now, everybody says, well, Passover, that's when Jesus had his Last Supper with the disciples. And Michael Rood correctly says, no, that's not really true. One of the reasons is that, okay, well, when Judas was going to do his thing, and then he was going to betray Yeshua, and Yeshua said, go and do what you do quickly, a lot of the disciples around the table thought that he was going to buy something for the Passover, which is what the word says. Well, if it was truly that day, Passover, we're seeing here on the calendar, the very next day is the first day of unleavened bread, which we'll get to in a minute. Yes. And that is a high holy day, which means no one can work and the stores would be closed. So why would Yeshua tell Judas to go buy something at the store that night
after sunset, when all the stores would be closed. That's your first clue that it's not really Passover. And secondly, Yeshua was our Passover lamb.
That's right. He was our sacrifice. And so if he was really participating in what we call Passover, essentially, there's no way that he could have been present because he was supposed to be crucified at the same time that the high priests were sacrificing the Passover lamb for the people. This is temple period. The temple was still around. They were still following the laws. All the stores would have been closed. It's not like America today where some close and some don't. No, the whole land was keeping these feast days. It was a requirement. So he couldn't have been at Passover, or the Last Supper could have not been our Passover if he were truly the Passover lamb and fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
Or the first Passover in the Old Testament. So
right, and I've even heard it said that when Judas left the room, that was like the leavening being taken out of the room. Yeah, which was interesting. Which brings us to our next point, the Feast of Unleavened Bread, which is commonly what everybody calls, not everybody, but it's commonly referred to as the Passover week. Passover is actually only that one day, and Annie just said it's not a high holy day, but the Feast of Unleavened Bread has 7 days. During which the first and seventh day are high holy days.
That's right. And so throughout the entire week, it's not a high holy week. It's just the first and the seventh day. Now, we're not supposed to buy or sell, and we're supposed to treat it like a regular Sabbath. So we're supposed to meet, fellowship with one another. We're supposed to dedicate it to God. A lot of people take that opportunity to spend time with family or go to church, or both, honestly. But the Feast of Unleavened Bread is truly what it is, which is a week where you get the leavening out of your home, where you get the yeast out of your home and out of your life. And it's supposed to symbolize us cleaning ourselves, cleaning our lives for Yahovah and Yeshua.
Right, because what does yeast do? If you put yeast into a lump of dough, and Yeshua taught on this, where it makes the dough rise, which means it puffs up. And that symbolizes pride and arrogance. And we're supposed to get all these things out of our lives because, pride comes before the fall, right?
That's right.
So we're supposed to be humble before Yehovah, and that week is actually kind of a personal challenge too, especially in this day and age. Can you avoid everything with leaven in it for a week? That's a real challenge. And quite often you find yourself, when you start practicing the high holy days as a Christian, you begin to realize, wow, I never even realized. You'll go through the week and go, whoops, I accidentally ate some leaven. And that's how easy it is to fall into sin. And that's the whole object lesson of this week. Yehovah wants to show us that we really need him, and we really need to depend on him at all times, because if we don't, we're going to fall into sin.
That's right. And we have a lot more teachings available on michaelrood.tv and aroodawakening.tv for you to watch. Michael has hours and hours upon on the feast days, the spring feast days, Passover in particular, and you're more than welcome to watch all of that again on michaelrood.tv or aroodawakening.tv.
Great. Okay, thanks, Annie. Well, coming up, Passover, the Path to Freedom. This is the first part of a 5-part teaching series available on DVD. We only have time to show you the first bit tonight, but if you like it, go to the website at the bottom of your screen and you can get the DVD set to watch at your leisure. Also tonight, we just want to thank you for your faithfulness to this ministry. Sometimes, just like anywhere else, you wonder if you're making a difference, and then the letters come in of lives changed, prayers answered, and new people every week, as Annie just mentioned, finally discovering who they really are in Messiah, and we have you to thank for that. None of those things I just mentioned happens without your support, but all of it does happen with your support. So if you like sowing into kingdom purposes that are truly making a difference in people's lives and bringing them to Yehovah, this is the place to sow. Not just because of anything we're doing on the stage here, but because of what Yehovah is doing through A Rood Awakening International. So we thank you for your support. And if you'd like one more chance to get that love gift we talked about earlier, stay tuned. Here's how you can get it. The nation of Israel began with 2 brothers, Jacob and Esau. Esau was born first. Jacob was close behind, appearing to have his hand around his brother's heel. From that point, Jacob was nicknamed the supplanter, one who tries to trip up or overthrow, and has always been depicted as a deceiver. But is Jacob really the liar and cheat that he has been made out to be? Or have we misinterpreted a spiritual message in the story of Jacob's hand
and Esau's heel.
Esau and Jacob are not going to walk side by side in a partnership on behalf of the family because they're two opposing forces.
Jacob, the Hand and the Heel is an exclusive love gift teaching with special guest Bill Cloud. Right now, you can receive this teaching as our thanks for your love gift donation of just $50.
The Jacob, if you will, the Israel that we are to be, has to grow daily. It has to mature daily. It has to increase daily.
Act now to receive this teaching with Bill Cloud for your love gift donation of just $50. Or, with a love gift of $100 or more, we'll send you the teaching and this praise and worship CD by Andrew Hodkinson. Plus, a stunning miniature replica of a clay pot found in the caves of the Israeli desert, containing the Dead Sea Scrolls, a tribute to the family of Jacob, Israel, who were entrusted to guard and protect the Word of God.
Maybe the Bible is suggesting to us here that the reason he was called Yaakov was because his hand was on his brother's heel. Now why?
Make your love gift donation now. $50, $100 or more to receive these special gifts. Jacob, the Hand and the Heel collection, available only in March. Call or visit our website to make your love gift donation now.
On the momentous occasion upon which Nehemiah Gordon and his team had found more than 1,000 ancient Hebrew manuscripts of the Bible with all of the vowels of the name, he has come in to do several programs and is also going to be releasing during this period of time that's coming up some of the Gospels in Hebrew. But many questions have come up, and so I've asked Nehemiah to come in for some Q&A, some questions and answers directly from Nehemiah. And Nehemiah, it's good to have you with us and looking forward to what we're going to be doing over the next few weeks in our adventure.
I'm really excited about this, Michael. It's really amazing things to share. I can't wait to share with people.
Well, I'm just going to throw out some questions to you that have come in, and so I'll let you handle these things. Yeah. Okay. When were the vowels added to the text, and how can we trust them?
That's a really good question, Michael. So we found over 1,000 manuscripts with the full vowels of God's holy name, Yehovah. And the question then becomes, when is our earliest manuscript? What's interesting to me is these 1,000+ manuscripts span over 1,000 years. The latest manuscript is when they stopped making manuscripts, which really was in Yemen in the late 19th century, the late 1800s. The earliest manuscript we have that has a definitive date on it, where it's actually dated in the text, is from the year 894 AD. It's the manuscript. It was the personal Bible of a rabbi named Saadia Gaon. Interestingly, Saadia Gaon was famous in Jewish history for being an enemy of the Karaite Jews. He wrote whole books attacking Karaite Judaism. The second earliest manuscript we have is, called the Cairo Codex of the Prophets, and that is from the year 895, 1 year later than the Saadia Gaon Codex. What's interesting to me about this, at the time you have these two rival groups, the Karaites and the rabbinical Jews, and they're at loggerheads with each other about everything, and they're really breathing down each other's neck. If any side had dared change a single letter or vowel of the Bible, the other side would have called them on it. I mean, they called them on everything about interpreting the Bible, of how they kept the commandments. There's whole books written about how wrong the rabbis are, and the rabbis wrote how wrong the Karaites are. But when it came to the Bible, they had unanimity that every jot and tittle, every dot and dash was what was transmitted from the prophets, and nobody dared change anything. Now, what we've discovered is that not only is there the common, what's called Tiberian pointing. That's the Bibles. Anybody who's ever seen Hebrew, they've seen Tiberian pointing. There was an entire second group of Jewish Masoretes, that is, Bible transmitters in Babylon. And the ones in Babylon, they were the descendants of the people who came over in 586 BC when they were exiled by Nebuchadnezzar. And they preserved the Bible independently of what was being kept in Israel. And in their Bibles, they use a different set of vowel points. Their vowel points are all written above the letters, and they're called, therefore, supralinear, or above-the-line vowel pointing, and they actually pronounce certain words differently. For example, in the Babylonian pointing, they don't say Moshe for Moses, which we do in Tiberian Hebrew. They say Moshe. In fact, they don't even have an S sound, which is really interesting because a Babylonian Jew could never say Yahweh because there's no E in his language. It doesn't exist. This Babylonian vowel system was continued. That is, this separate dialect of Hebrew survived both among the Jews of Babylon, of Iraq, and the Jews of Yemen. So the Jews of Yemen could never say Yahweh because they don't have an S sound. They don't have that sound in their language. They say Moshe, not Moshe. And so we found so far 3 Bibles with Babylonian pointing that have the vowels Yehovah. So we have this from 2 different rival camps, the Karaites and the Rabbinites. We have it from 2 different dialects of Hebrew, the Hebrew used in Israel and the Hebrew used in Babylon. On top of that, Michael, we have early references to the fact that the vowel points, whether they were written or not, is a matter of dispute. Most scholars claim they were only written around the year 600 AD, but they weren't invented. In other words, the vowels, whether they were written or not, were part of the text of the Bible that was immutable. It couldn't be changed. And we know that because in the Talmud, there's a story, a number of stories, but a key one I mentioned in my book, Shattering the Conspiracy of Silence. It's about Rabbi Joshua and Rabban Gamliel. This is the grandson of the Gamaliel that Shaul studied under. Yeah. This is Gamaliel II around the year 89 or 90 AD. He has this, there's this whole incident, I won't go into the story, but what comes out of that story is that it's clear that if the rabbis wanted to change the vowels, they were not able to. They make reference to the fact that the vowels are a certain way in a verse, and they say, let's pretend it says something different. But we're still going to read it the original way in the synagogue. Well, why not just change the vowels? If the vowels were invented later and aren't codified in some set way, in other words, I don't know if they were written down or not, but it's clear they couldn't change the vowels if they wanted. Now, if you'll allow me with a few more minutes, I want to share something that's never been shared publicly before. It's something I discovered a few weeks ago, that in 1972, this scholar in Israel discovered a poem written in the 6th century AD, before the vowels were supposedly invented, right? Mm-hmm. In other words, the claim is the vowels were only invented in the year 600 AD. This is a poem from around the year 550, a poem from Elazar Kalir. And in this poem, he mentions how God revealed his name to the rabbis, essentially, that in public we call him Adonai, but the pure and innocent, they call themselves, know the secret of the name. It was a secret by the 6th century. And it mentions how you taught us to pronounce your name with a kamatz lip. Kamatz is one of the vowels in Yehovah. It's the 3rd vowel. And this is indisputably the earliest references to vowels by name, meaning we have references to the vowels existed in, like I said, in the Mishnah in around the year 90 AD. But the vowels by name, any vowels, this is the earliest reference. This poem by Elazar Kalir, where he mentions you speak, the innocent and pure speak the name with the kamatz lip. And the kamatz is the name of that vowel, Yehovah. By the way, Yahweh doesn't have a kamatz. It has a patach, which is a different Hebrew vowel. We'll talk about that maybe in a different segment.
Well, that's now this is what we learn in American Bible Cemetery, is that the name has the vowels of Adonai. Right. And I know it's going to take more time than what we have right now, but can you give us a little teaser on that?
Absolutely, and we'll get to that more, I think, in a future episode. But Adonai, this is standard. This has been since the time of Gesenius. The vowels in the name Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh are the vowels of Adonai. For 200 years, we've been told that. If you look in the actual Hebrew manuscripts of the Bible, that is factually untrue. All you have to do is look at them, and you can see factually that they're untrue, and that those are not the vowels of Adonai. And then they have some kind of linguistic excuse. They say, well, it's a guttural letter, a laryngeal, and therefore they couldn't put that vowel. I found at least 4 manuscripts where they put the exact vowels of Adonai, and what that show in the name Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh. So there actually are some manuscripts where that happens, and that's what we call the exception that teaches the rule. It shows you if the scribes wanted to put the vowels of Adonai, there was nothing preventing them from doing so. But the fact is, in thousands of Bible manuscripts, they refrain from putting the vowels of Adonai. They put vowels that are unique to the name Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, to the Tetragrammaton, the name of the Father alone.
Well, we're going to get into this in great detail, and I believe we're going to have some more upcoming in our sessions, some more questions before we get to the 4 episodes in which we have Nehemiah revealing some of the greatest treasures that have ever been unearthed. And we've been waiting thousands of years. I know I've been waiting.
You've been waiting thousands of years.
I know I've been waiting 18 years for the Hebrew Gospels that these are going to be coming up, but not right now. So we'll see you next week with some more questions and answers with Nehemiah Gordon.
This year's Passover event will take you back in time to the Last Supper and prepare you for the future fulfillment of the Revelation. Watch it all unfold online and learn what lies ahead in biblical prophecy. Get your Watch Online package now, including a special Passover edition of Shabbat Night Live, plus well-known teachers of the end times, Perry Stone, Bill Cloud, Joel Richardson, and Chris Knight, plus Michael Rood's all-new Passover narrative from a scale replica of Solomon's Temple. Watch live, replay, even download them to keep. All for just $79. Or get the premium package to watch, replay, download, and get it all on DVD or Blu-ray for just $99. Plus, your DVD or Blu-ray package also includes 2 bonus teachings you won't see online, featuring naturopath and health author Scott Laird and director of Aviv Fellowships, Matthew Hall. You get it all for just $99. Get your Watch Online package now at PassoverCharlotte.com.
The composite of the gospel records tell us that before the Passover lamb was sacrificed the following morning, that Yeshua had his Last Supper with his disciples, in which he took bread, arton, leavened bread, and he took wine, and he said, "This represents my body, which will be broken for you. This cup represents my shed blood, which will pay for the iniquity." It is this very thing that the Melchizedek shared with Abraham. As Yeshua said, Abraham saw my day and rejoiced. And when the Melchizedek brought forth bread and wine, he shared with them about the coming of the Messiah, about his broken body, about his shed blood. And Abraham gave 1/10 of everything that he owned and laid it at the feet of the Melchizedek. He saw Yeshua's day and he rejoiced. And so now, every time we do this, every Sabbath, every meal in which there's bread and wine, in which we take this and we bless the Most High. Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech ha'olam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Yeshua said, "This is my body, which is broken for you." As often as you do it in remembrance of me. And then Yeshua took the cup, and he said, "Blessed are you, Yehovah, our Elohim, King of the universe, who brings forth the fruit of the vine," the creator of the fruit of the vine. And every time we do this, we do remember his death and what he did for us until he comes. One day, at the marriage supper of the Lamb, Yeshua will lift his cup and say, "I have not had a drop of this, as I promised at the Last Supper. I've been waiting for you. Now, l'chaim, to life everlasting." Welcome to Passover, the Path of Freedom. This is episode 1 of the 5-part series leading up to Passover, and this is the birth of the nations. Our exodus from Egypt could not have transpired unless we first were in Egypt. And the story of how we got into Egypt, the nation of Israel, is one of the greatest stories in the entire human epoch. And it takes us all the way back to the time of the flood. And when we want to understand the scriptures, such as in the book of the Revelation, we see that paradise is restored upon a new heaven and earth. But it is without meaning unless we go back to the beginning in Genesis 1, in which we are living in paradise. we are then ejected from paradise, and then throughout the course of human events, finally, paradise is restored, and there is no more weeping, there is no more wailing, there are no more tears at that time. But there is plenty of weeping and wailing and tears. There's plenty of pain that is suffered on the way to the restoration of what the Almighty had for us in the beginning, until we, as Adam and Hava, rebelled against him, disobeyed him, and that authority that we had as the kings of this earth was then relinquished over to the God of this age, Hasatan. And so to understand the end, we have to understand the beginning. And to understand the Passover, it is going to take us about 5 weeks of laying the foundations to find out how this one family, this chosen people, are chosen to be the priest, the representatives of the Most High God. But in order for them to even need a priesthood, for mankind to need someone to show the way back into the grace of the Almighty, we have to go back to the flood. And please take your Bibles, and we're going to turn to Genesis chapter 9. Genesis chapter 9, and we are going to go actually after the flood. We're not going to detail the incident of the flood itself, but in the 18th verse of Genesis chapter 9, we read, "The sons of Noah that went forth from the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham was the father of Canaan." Now you see that parenthetical phrase right here in the book of Genesis, in your King James Version of the Bible, and this lets you know that we are being set up. Because Ham, it says now, and Ham was the father of Canaan. Well, this is going to transpire after many years that Ham is going to have his youngest son by the name of Canaan. But the reason that we're told is that we are starting a storyline here that is going to then take us for generations, for hundreds of years, for all this to play out. But to understand what Canaan did and how it affects planet Earth, this is where it all begins. Verse 19. "These are the 3 sons of Noah, and from them was the whole earth overspread." Or as we would say in modern English, it was plentished, or it was filled by these 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And so it is again telling us, setting us up, because we're going to find out how the world was filled with these 3 families when we get to chapter 11, when at the Tower of Babel. But now we continue on. In verse 20, "And Noah began as a man who planted a vineyard." The word "began" that I have here is literally from the Hebrew, means wounded. And it's really it means he began, or he started over. Because after 600 years before the flood, and spending all this time, 100 years building the ark, now life starts over. He's an old man, and his hopes, his dreams, where he started from was all wounded, and so it's time to start over. And this many times is used for middle-aged and elderly men, because, when we're young, we're full of vitality, we've got hopes and we've got dreams, but then life happens and we become wounded, and there's an opportunity and a need to start over. And Noah started over as a husbandman or as a farmer, and he planted a vineyard. He drank the wine, got drunk, and was uncovered, by whom we don't know yet. He was uncovered in his tent. Then Ham, the father of Canaan, and again, Canaan is his youngest son. Why is it even brought in here? Because Ham saw the nakedness of his father, told his 2 brothers, Shem and Japheth, who were outside. So Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it on their shoulders, went in backward, covered the nakedness of their father. They faced the opposite direction so they could not see their father's nakedness. But when Noah awoke from his wine, he knew what his younger son had done to him. Now, we find out that in chapter 10, verse 21, that Japheth is the elder. And when it says elder and younger, we know that elder and younger are relative terms. And in Old King James English, we don't have young, younger, and youngest. it is relative when it says Japheth the elder. That means he is the eldest of the brothers, the elder of the two other brothers. And so when Noah awoke and saw what his younger son, whose younger son is this speaking of? It is speaking of Ham's younger son, Canaan. Canaan is the one that was responsible for the deed. Ham discovered it, then told his brothers, and his brothers went in to take care of the situation. And when Noah found out what Ham's younger son, which is Canaan, had done to him, he said, appropriately, "Cursed be Canaan," who is the youngest son of Ham. A servant, and it means the lowest of servants, shall he be unto his brethren. Then he said, "Blessed be Yehovah, Elohim of Shem. May the Lord God bless Shem. Canaan shall be his servant. God shall also enlarge Japheth, and he shall dwell in the tents of Shem, and Canaan also shall be his servant." And so now it tells us the length of Noah's life, and then he died. Now in chapter 10, verse 1, we get into the table of nations. These are the generation, or the offsprings of the son of Noah. And this is where the synopsis begins of what transpires from these three men, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And it concludes, the synopsis concludes in chapter 10, verse 32. And we're going to select a few very important parts here, because without understanding this, we will not understand either the history of Israel or the history of the human race. So we continue on. These are the offspring of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and unto them were sons born after the flood. The sons of Japheth, it says in verse 2, and it goes on and lists them, and then it says in verse 5, by these, the sons of Japheth, were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families, in their nations. Now here again, we have a setup to tell us what is going to be transpired, because they are not divided up, because the whole earth is of one language at this time, of one tongue, of one family, of the family of Noah. And so it is telling us what is going to be transpiring after the incident of the Tower of Babel, which human history cannot be understood without the event of chapter 11 of the book of Genesis. Anthropology cannot be put together. It's a fairy tale outside of this. This is how we know. And now, verse 6, the sons of Ham. Now we had the sons of Japheth, who is the eldest. Now we have the sons of Ham, which is Cush, Mitzrayim, Put in Canaan. And so we have now Canaan. He is the younger of the sons of Ham. And then it tells us about the sons of Cush. And now in verse 8 it says that Cush, the son of Ham, begat Nimrod. And Nimrod began to be a mighty one in the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord, before Yehovah. The word before is a panai, in the face of, in opposition. He was a mighty hunter. He captured men. He was an absolute tyrant, and we're going to find out the details of this. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod, the mighty hunter, in opposition in the face of Yehovah, and the beginning of his kingdom was Babel. The beginning, and Erech and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. And out of that land, out of the land of Shinar, where the Tower of Babel was, went forth Asher. Now who is Asher? Asher is the son of Shem. So again, it's telling us what is going to transpire after the confusion of languages at the Tower of Babel. Now Asher is the son of Shem, but what did Asher do? Because now we have Nimrod, we have Ham's son Cush, who begat Nimrod, Nimrod's one world government empire, and out of Babylon, after the confusion of languages, came forth Asher. And he built Nineveh, which is in Assyrian the house of Ninus, Ninus is Assyrian for Nimrod, and the city of Rehoboth, and Calach, which is modern day Nimrud, which is a more proper translation, and Rezin between Nineveh and Calah, which is a great city. And so Babylonian sun worship, which had been all put in place before the confusion of languages, now it is Asher who brings this over into the land which becomes known as Assyria or Asheria from Asher, who is a Shemite, who is a son of Shem. And now we're going to continue on down because the youngest son of Ham is brought up in verse 15. Canaan begat Zidon, his firstborn, and Het, and the Jebusite, the Amorite, the Girgasite, the Hivite, the Arkite, the Sinite, the Arvadite, the Zemarite, the Hamathite, and afterward, and what is this afterward again? This afterward is after the Tower of Babel incident, where the languages were confused. The families of the Canaanites were spread abroad. And the border of the Canaanites became from Zidon, as thou comest unto Gerar, unto Gaza, as thou goest unto Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and even unto Lasha. And so this is what is almost all-inclusive of what is nowadays the modern land of Israel. These cities, the cities of the plains, Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, which were all destroyed by fire and brimstone, and Zeboim, those are the four cities, and Zoar have all been found. The imprint of the remains of these have all been left, and we're going to be into that in just a little bit. But this is where the Canaanites. Now, let's stop this for just a minute. Canaan was cursed because of his sexual perversion. And this sexual perversion, finally, after the confusion of languages, these people who were cursed for their father's sexual perversion now come into a land, and the names of the cities, Sodom and Gomorrah. I mean, Sodom. You know, we understand what sodomy is. I mean, by the time you have this grossly immoral, repugnant, vile, and disgusting sin that is, it's even a shame to even think about what these perverts were doing and enslaving people and trafficking and child, pedophilia, which is all the rage now among the priesthood in Rome. But it's a misnomer. Pedophilia, which is child, philia, or phileo, love, it's anything but child love. It is the most absolute debauched thing that a person could do. And this is what these people were into. In the land of Israel, even today, every one of these ancient ruins that are dug up, these tells, they find the statue of Easter, the bare-breasted goddess of fertility from Babylon. And these are Canaanite goddesses. You can buy them in antique stores. Cost you $5,000 a piece if you want one of these things, but they were into this rampant sexual perversion, buying and selling people, abusing them to death. This is what was going on. And we're going to see the details of this, but it's important to understand that they were cursed by Noah, and that curse remains on them. Now they are squatting in a land that doesn't belong to them. Now we continue on, verse 21. And Shem, the father of the children of Eber. Now, why does it bring this up? Shem, the father of the children of Eber. Eber is going to be like 6 generations later. Eber, Hebrew. Eberu. It means to cross over. And we see that in verse 25, verse 22, it says that the children of Shem are Elam and Asher, or in fact, said Lud and Aram. Okay, so just as I was saying. Now, in verse 25, unto Eber were born 2 sons, and the name of one was Peleg, for in his days was the earth divided. This is not talking about the division of the continents. That is probably the best articulated in the hydroplate theory of Dr. Walter Brown, the dividing of the continents and what happened at the time of the flood. This is not what it's talking about. Keep it in context. It's talking about dividing the nations at the Tower of Babel, which is the very next verse, and we are given the exact number of years to the birth of Peleg so that we will understand when this transpired, which is very important. which is, and it's less than 400 years after the flood that finally the Almighty had to step in and circumvent the one world economic, political, and religious world government system, a system of totalitarian slavery, a one world government, a novus ordo seclorum of the day that had to be intervened by the Almighty because there was no amount of evil that would be held back from the twisted, sick mind of man. And so, we continue on in verse 32. We'll drop down. These are the families of the sons of Noah after their generation in their nations, and by these were the nations divided in the earth after the flood. Not only after the flood, but when? After the Tower of Babel, and the whole thing is a setup for now, the next verse. But let me intervene what Moses now tells us in Deuteronomy. See, Deuteronomy is the epitome of a verse that was written by King David. He says that he made known his acts unto the children of Israel. He made known his ways unto Moses. And Moses details in the book of Deuteronomy why the Almighty did what he did. Now, Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 7 tells us a very important thing to lead into the Tower of Babel incident. Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Ask your father, and he will show you. Ask your elders, and they will tell you about the time when the Most High divided to the nations their inheritance, when he separated the sons of Adam. He set the bounds of the people according to the number of the children of Israel. What he did at the Tower of Babel, he did for a reason. He destroyed the one world government of Nimrod, confused the languages, divided up these nations. Why? Because he had a plan that he would choose people that would not be born for hundreds and hundreds of years. And that these children, these offspring, would be his priests, his representatives to reconcile the world back to himself. We see in the time of Jonah, way into the future, hundreds of years in the future, that after a revival had started in the land of Israel, things started to get together. He said, now go to Assyria and tell the people to repent. Why is this important? Because the Assyrians need to be reconciled to the one true God as well. They repented. And because of that, they were used to judge Israel later on. But now we're going to find out how it all happened. These nations were divided. The Almighty then chose a group of people, one nation, one family, to be his representatives. And this is how it happened. Genesis chapter 11, verse 1. The whole earth was of one language and one speech. Seems to be saying the same thing, but in the Hebrew, it's saying that every word meant the same thing. See, we use the same word in different continents in English, and even from north to south, and that's one word means several different things. At this time, every word meant exactly what everyone understood it to mean. There was no confusion. It was absolute crystal clear communication, but that communication was used to build an empire to enslave people. A prison planet, if you please. And it came to pass, as they, the offspring of Noah, journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they all dwelt there. And they said one to another, go to, which in Old English, King James English, means come now, the opposite of when you tell someone to go to. It means literally, come now, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone and slime they had for mortar. And down the Dead Sea Valley, in that area, the slime, the asphalt, the pitch was used to cement these bricks together. They were not taking the time to chisel out stone. That would take too long. No, they made brick, they burned them in furnaces to harden them, and then they built the tower, and they used the pitch from that part of the world. And they said, let us come now, or go to, come now, and let us build a city and a tower whose top may reach into heaven, and let us make a name, lest we be scattered upon the face of the whole earth. And so now, The political, economic, and religious one-world government ruled by Nimrod is now in place. It's the beginning of his kingdom. Then Yahovah came down to see the city and the tower which the children of men had built, and he said, behold, the people are one. They are echad. They're not one person. They are united. They are all united in what they are planning to do, and they have all one language, and this which they've begun, now nothing is going to be restrained from them. Now, let us go down and confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So Yahovah scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off building the city and their totalitarian prison planet. Therefore the name is called Babel, because Yahovah did confound the language of the people there. Now in verse 10. These are the generations of Shem. It shifts gear. Now we're going to find the chosen people. These are the generations of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begat Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. We are going to be given the date of the next generation, how many years they lived, and finally we get to verse 16, and Eber lived 430 years and begat Peleg. Now they would only name Peleg, which means divided, Peleg, if this is at the time that the Tower of Babel and the languages were confused and the people were divided. So definitely less than 400 years after the flood that took place. Now we follow this family, the Hebrews, the Ebers. We follow them down to verse 26. Terah, who is the offspring, lived 70 years and begat Avram, Nahor, and Haran. And verse 27, now these are the generations of Terah. And it says that Haran died before his father Terah in the land of his nativity in Ur of the Chaldees. This is Babylon. It's on the other side of the Euphrates River. And Avram and Nahor took themselves wives. The name of Avram's wife was Sarai. And now we go to chapter 12. This is when the Almighty interrupts the course of human events. Yahovah said to Avram, get out of your country, from among your kindred, and from your father's house unto a land that I will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless them that bless you. I will curse those that curse you, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. And so Avram did depart. He crossed over the Euphrates River, becoming the first technically Hebrew when he crossed over the Euphrates River. And as he departed, and this is after the death of his father when he leaves. And so Abraham departed as he was told, and he took Lot with him. And Lot was his nephew. He could have been years and years older because he was the son of the oldest brother of Haran. And so he could have been many years older, but still his nephew. And Abraham was 75 when he departed out of Haran. Now this is when, and we'll get into some detail on this, when the 430-year sojourn begins, when Avram departs from Haran. And it's 430 years until Exodus 12:40, the actual Passover and our Exodus from Egypt, exactly 430 years later. Now, the way that the English translation has it, it makes it sound like we were in bondage for 430 years, but we're going to see that that is not the case. We have several different ways to cross-reference this. In verse 5, and Avram took Sarai his wife and Lot his brother's son, all their substance, and the souls that they had gotten, and they went forth into the land of Canaan. The land of Canaan, filled with sexual perversion. And into the land of Canaan they came. Abraham passed through unto the place of Shechem, which is modern day Nablus. Why it's called Nablus is because the Arabs can't pronounce a P. It's really Neapolis, but they can't pronounce Neapolis, so they say Nablus, okay? It is the hotbed of Palestinian terrorism, even to this day in the land of Israel, but at the time it was Shechem. That was the name of this city. And so it was at Shechem in the plain of Moreh, which means the teacher. But the Canaanite was then in the land. Again, what is the big deal about the Canaanites? You have to understand the history, and you have to understand what these people are doing, and we are going to find out, because we're going to see brimstone rain down out of heaven and incinerate this before the night is over. Right here is some of the brimstone that rained down 4,000 years ago. 95.72% pure sulfur, 3 other trace metals. It'll melt right through the windshield of a car even today, but that's later. Then, when Yahovah appeared unto him at Shechem, this is where he built an altar. Whenever the revelation comes, when the Almighty meets with you, what Avram does is he builds an altar to never, ever forget this moment. And this is the seriousness whenever the Almighty speaks to you. And it can be rare. But those who think he's constantly chattering away with them, okay, why don't you build an altar there? Because when he gives you instructions, it is a monumental thing in your life. And Abraham treated every one of these things with the utmost dignity. And in fact, the Almighty said, when you come into the land, Israel, do not remove the ancient markers. Do not remove the altars that were put there before, because you may not know what they are, but I know what they are, and he is able to reveal this very thing to us. And so he went from thence and he moved over to Bethel, the house of Elohah, and he pitched his tent there, and he built another altar unto Yahovah. And there he called, at Bethel, he called upon the name of Yahovah. Many, many years later, this is where the tabernacle is going to be built. It will remain there for 400 years at Bethel before David removes it and takes it to Jerusalem. All these cities, all these names, extremely important. And what I was quoting is out of Deuteronomy 19:14. Thou shalt not, these are the instructions to the children of Israel, thou shalt not remove another person's landmark, which they of old time have set in your inheritance, which you shall inherit in the land that Yahovah thy Elohim gives thee to possess it. And so now it says that Abraham went down into Egypt to sojourn there because there was a famine in the land of Canaan, and we see what transpired when he is down there. And then when he comes out of Egypt after a period of time, in chapter 13, verse 7, there arose a strife between the herdsmen of Abraham's cattle, it says in your King James, and whenever you see the word cattle, it is flocks. Do not think of bovine, you must think of flocks of sheep and goats. They did have bovine down in Egypt, but this is not what it's talking about. The word cattle is King James for the Hebrew, which means flocks. And it says that the strife arose between Abraham and Lot's herdsmen, and it says that the Canaanite and the Perizzite dwelt then in the land. Again, bringing this up, what is in the land? They are in the middle of a sick, twisted, and perverse world. And Abraham said, we don't need this. You decide. If you want to go to the left, go to the left. If you want to go to the right, whichever way you go, you take the land and I'll take the opposite. You choose. You're going to have it your way. And Lot lifted up his eyes toward the plain of Jordan, that was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord before it was destroyed. And Sodom and Gomorrah was there. And it was well watered all over Sodom and Gomorrah before he destroyed it. And then it says, so Abraham dwelt in the land of Canaan, but, and this is verse 12, but Lot dwelled in the cities of the plain. So he was in the land of Canaan, but Lot turned his eyes and he went and dwelt in the city of Sodom. And it says that in verse 13, the men of Sodom were exceedingly wicked and sinners before Yahovah. And it was at that time that the Almighty spoke to Abraham and said, arise, walk through the land, the length and the breadth of the land, for I will give this to you. And so now at this point, when he was told that he was going to be given this land, now he's told to walk through the length and the breadth of this very land. And so now Abraham disappears for the next 10 years. We don't even hear about him. Why? because all this land goes all the way to the river in Egypt, all the way to the Euphrates, and he walked the length and the breadth of the land. It takes him 10 to 13 years to accomplish all of this. And then he finally moved his tent and dwelt in the plain of Mamre, which is Hebron. And he built another altar to Yahovah. Now we are going to come to the incident where Lot is taken hostage. 4 kings against 5 kings. And they come to Sodom and they take away Lot. And Abraham gets together his household of 318 men. And he makes a commitment to the Almighty. We don't hear about it at first, we hear about it afterwards, that he has raised his hands in a solemn oath to the Almighty. If you allow me and my 318 servants to go and rescue Lot and to conquer these kings who have gone against fortified cities and have taken them and have taken their people, taken their treasures, if you allow me to do this, I will not put my hand to the spoils. I am going to trust in your promise that this land has been given to me, and I am not going to go the way anyone else would and receive the spoils from this. I'm going to trust in you. I have faith that you are my sufficiency, and I am committing my life to do your will. I think now is a good moment to stop, because each week we want to give you an opportunity to give to support the work of this ministry. We are freely, at great expense, we are freely giving to the entire world. Close to 20 man days of labor, 16 to 20 man days of labor goes into each one of these productions for our Shabbat Night Live. We are broadcast in over 127 countries, but to stay on the air, it takes your help, your support. So if we are a blessing to you in your life, if we are ministering to you, then we ask that you trust the Almighty and that you then sow seed back into this ministry so that we can continue to reach out. Abraham with 318 men, was able to accomplish what the kings and all their forces in the fortified cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboim, and Zoar could not do. And when he came back, the king of Sodom came forth to meet him. But someone far more important, we read about in the 14th chapter, the 14th verse of 18th verse of Genesis 14. And then Melchizedek, or the Melech Zadok, Melech, King, Zadok, righteousness, the king of righteousness, the king of Shalom, Yerushalayim, brought forth bread and wine. He was the priest of the Most High God. And he blessed Avram and said, "Blessed be Avram of the Most High, possessor of heaven and earth." And then he blessed the Most High God, which had delivered the enemies of Abraham into his hand. And Abraham, it says, gave the Melchizedek tithes of all that he possessed. Yeshua said, "Abraham saw my day, and he rejoiced in it." Rejoiced of his vast empire, the gold, the silver, the flocks. He gave a tenth of everything because he shared with them the broken body. He shared with them the shed blood. He shared with them the coming of the Messiah. And Abraham rejoiced in it and gave a tenth of everything. What an incredible reality. And then the king of Sodom said, "Give me back the people that belong to me. Take all the goods." Abraham said, "No, I have sworn by the Most High God, the possessor of heaven and earth, I am not going to take," in verse 23, "from a thread to a shoe latchet, lest you should say that I, and all my perversion, all my sin of my city has somehow made Abram wealth." No, I'm not going to take anything. Take everything. Just, what the plunderers have taken, let them take it, but I'm not taking anything. And then, now chapter 15, after these things, the word of Yahweh came unto Abram and said, "I am your shield and your exceeding great reward." And Abram responded and said, "Well, what kind of exceeding great reward can you give me? I'm a wealthy old man. I'm going to go to the grave childless. And my heir, Eliezer from Damascus is my steward, and I'm going to have to leave everything to those servants who have been born in my household. What are you going to do?" And the Almighty said, "I am going to bring forth an heir for you out of your own loins." And then he took him outside and said, "Look up at the stars in heaven. Can you count them? So your seed shall be. And just as the grain of the sand of the sea cannot be numbered, so that is what your offspring is going to be." And he said, "Well, how am I going to know this?" And verse 9, and he said unto him, "Take a heifer of 3 years old, a heifer, and a she-goat of 3 years old, and a ram of 3 years old, and a turtle and a young pigeon." Now this is where some illiterates get a 3-year-old red heifer from, because they don't know what they're talking about. The red heifer was not 3 years old. Okay? Could be a year and a half old, could well over 5 years old. There's no stipulation whatsoever. But in order to try to get a 3.5-year ministry, they concoct this whole thing that Jesus is the 3-year-old cow. Well, there's no such thing in the scripture, except for right here. Here is a 3-year-old heifer, a 3-year-old female goat, and a ram of 3 years old. And he said, "You take these, you cut them in half, except for the birds. You just break them and you put them on each side of the valley, let the blood run into the middle of this, and you and I are going to walk up and down through that blood." This is what is called a blood covenant. And when Avram and the Almighty walk up and down through that blood, whoever breaks the covenant, they die. Just like these animals are dead, that's what a blood covenant means. Whoever breaks a blood covenant are dead as the animals that ratified this covenant. And then the Almighty put Abraham into a deep sleep, and the Almighty, like a smoking fire pot, like a furnace of fire, walks up and down through that blood to signify this is not even up to you, Abraham. You're going to be dead and in the ground, sound asleep. 4,000 years ago, the creator of the heavens and the earth made an everlasting covenant with Abraham. All the land from the Euphrates to the Nile belongs to the sons of Israel. Shockwaves are going to shake the earth as heaven reaches down to fulfill that promise. And it will happen, ladies and gentlemen, this is the generation. And every nation that stands against the covenant of the Almighty will find themselves on the battlefield against the Almighty. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a reality that's playing out at this very time. And right now, it says in verse 13, and he said unto Abraham, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a strange land, a stranger in a land that is not yours, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. Okay, there's another way to translate this. Now listen to this. Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs for 400 years. They shall serve them and they shall afflict them. Because it'll now be 400 years until the Exodus of Exodus chapter 12, verse 40. From when he was told to leave Haran, cross over the Euphrates River, and then go into a land that he will give him, it was 430 years from then. But now it'll be 430 years from now, because the Almighty can't change how many years we're going to be in bondage. But now we have the progression of time. And even though this is out of time sequence, because we still had to get in a little bit later, it's going to tell about the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah, about the birth of Ishmael and Isaac and all. From when this covenant is made, it will be 400 years before we are coming out of the land. And also, we read in verse 14, that nation whom they shall serve, I will judge. And afterward they shall come out with great substance, the substance from that nation. Here's where the promise is made, and in 5 weeks from now, we will finally arrive at that moment when we walk out of Egypt with the plunder. And thou shalt go to your fathers in peace in an old age, but in the 4th generation, they will come forth hither again. The 4th generation from when we go into that nation, which we will now understand to be Egypt, in the 4th generation, they will come out, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet come to a full. See, the Almighty does not judge before his time. He is long-suffering, not willing that any should perish. Now, where are these 4 generations? I'm going to take you to Exodus 1 right now so that we understand the timing of this. Exodus chapter 2, verse 1, there went a man out of the house of Levi and took to wife a daughter of Levi. And we are going to find out that Jochebed is literally the daughter of Levi. Not the granddaughter, not the great-granddaughter, but literally the daughter of Levi, who is the brother of Joseph who came into Egypt. And in Exodus 6:16, these are the names of the sons of Levi, according to their generations, Gershon, Kohath, Merari. In the years of the life of Levi were 137. And the sons of Kohath was Amram, Izhar, Hebron, and Uzziel. Who is the son of Kohath? Amram. Who does Amram then, and then verse 20, it says, and Amram took Jochebed, his father's sister, to wife. This is the daughter of Levi. Just as Kohath was a son of Levi, now Amram took his father's sister to wife, which is his aunt, and she bare him Aaron and Moses. And the years of life of Amram were 137 years. And then in verse Exodus 2:21, Yitro gave Moses his daughter Zipporah, and she bare him a son and called his name Gershon. For he said, Moses said, I've been a stranger in a strange land. And so now we have who's coming out of Egypt? We have Amram and Jochebed, okay? So we have Jochebed, which is the 1st generation after Levi. We have Amram, then we have Moses, and then we have Gershon. We have the 4th generation now coming out of Egypt. Ladies and gentlemen, that is according to the work of E.W. Bullinger and also Ginsburg, the Rabbi Ginsburg, who became a believer, who worked with E.W. Bullinger, calculated this to be at 215 years that we were actually in the land of Egypt. Again, 430 years from when Abraham was told to come out and the promise was made. Then it would be 430 years before the Exodus, or from when the covenant was made and the Almighty walked through the blood 400 years from then. And then he was told at that incident it would be the fourth generation, which is numbered right down the line, which comes out to be 215 years, according to the chronology work of Edith Bullinger and Christian, which he renamed himself, Ginsburg, the Orthodox rabbi who was solely responsible for the Masorah, the Masoretic text. He saved it from extinction. So now we see that in verse 17, it came to pass that when the sun went down, the smoking furnace, the pieces, we've already covered that. The Almighty was the one that walked up and down through that, making the covenant with Abraham. In chapter 16, we have the incident of Hagar. At 86 years of age, Hagar, the handmaid of Sarah, who couldn't have any children, then she bears Ishmael. And Ishmael, this is the angel of Yehovah told Hagar what to name him, and it said that in verse 12, he will be a wild ass of a man. That's literally what it says in the Hebrew. He's going to be a wild ass of a man. His hand will be against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he will constantly be in the face of his brethren. Can't get along, fighting one tribe against another. My goodness, is this not exactly what we have seen of the 12 sons that came out of Ishmael? The wars that have gone on. They just talk about a wild ass of a man. That is exactly what we see in the, not only scripture, but in the history of the Middle East. And then in chapter 17, Avram was 90 years old, and Yehovah appeared unto him again. Now in 17, which one is this? Chapter 17, at this point, this is the fifth revelation to Avram, the fifth revelation. And he said to Avram, walk before me and be perfect, and I'm going to make my covenant between me and you and multiply you exceedingly. And this is where the Almighty changed his name from Avram to Abraham, which means the father of many nations. And he is going to be given, in verse 8, his seed will be given all of the land of Canaan. It will be stripped away from these sexual perverts, these predators, these pornographers and pedophiles, figure of speech, these traffickers, sex traffickers. They will be completely taken out of this land, and you will inherit this. Now this is the token. This is the token between me and you. You are going to circumcise the foreskin of every male in your household. The servants that you buy for money, the people that come out of your loins, every one of them is going to be circumcised. And this is going to be the token of my promise that all the land from the Euphrates to the Nile belongs to the sons of Israel. And so from then on, every day, several times a day, every one of the sons of Abraham are reminded, because of the circumcision, because there's a difference in their daily routine even, because now it is a constant reminder that the Almighty made this promise with Abraham. And every circumcised male can hearken back and realize that the Almighty made a covenant with Abraham that will be fulfilled, and it doesn't matter how dead and how asleep Abraham or his children are, the Almighty will fulfill this very thing. And then the Almighty came down. Well, Abraham was living in the plain there. He came down with his angels to see if, as it says in chapter 18, verse 20, Yehovah said, because the cry of Sodom and Gomorrah is great, because their sin is very great and grievous, I will go down and see whether they have done altogether according to the cry of it. Because there are people that were crying out to the Almighty. They were being abused. They were being chained up in dungeons, brought out for sex pervert parties, trying to drown out any voice of the Holy Spirit to reconcile. And so the Almighty sent fire and brimstone down upon the cities of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim. The angels came in and took the hands of Lot and his wife and Lot's 2 daughters and dragged them out of the city. Fire and brimstone rained down on the city, incinerating the cities of the plains. And then we read about what happens to Lot and his 2 daughters. His 2 daughters then have children by their father. One is named Ammon, the other is Moab, and they become the Ammonites and the Moabites. Now in the capital of Jordan is Ammon. Ammon. These are the offspring of the incestuous relationship between Lot and his daughter. His 2 daughters, the Ammonites and the Moabites. And it is Lot's wife who turns back. She just doesn't glance back, she turns back. She doesn't want to leave all of the accoutrements, all that is available there in the land of Sodom and Gomorrah for her. She turns back and she is incinerated, and all that is left are the mineral salts from her body. And that's what still leached from the ground, from the ash there at the city of Sodom and Gomorrah are the mineral salts of the people who continue to leach to the surface, and the desert gazelle are now eating the mineral salts from the incinerated inhabitants of Sodom and Gomorrah. And now we see that Avram, finally, at 100 years of age, has a child with Sarah, who means now princess. From Sarai to Sarah. From Avram to the father of many nations, now has a son, and his name is Yitzhak. Yitzhak is then the prize, the pride, the joy, the future of Abraham, and then the Almighty tells him. Chapter 22, take your son, your only son Isaac. Now, Ishmael is his son, but he's calling him his only son because this is the son of promise. Avram did what he thought he could do and should do, and he had a child by this Egyptian woman, Hagar. But no, that's not the child of promise. This is your only son. This is the one I promised you, the one that you love. And get into the land of Moriah, the land where Yah will be our teacher, our More. See, rabbi doesn't mean teacher. Rabbi means great one. More is teacher. Go to the land of Moriah and offer him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains which I will tell you of. And that mountain is the mountain, Mount Moriah, the mount where Yah will be our teacher. This is the mountain where the way of salvation will be shown. And there it is that Abraham builds, then takes his son with his servants and approaches from the valley, comes up onto the temple, what becomes the Temple Mount in the future, and then has his servants put the wood of the sacrifice on the shoulders of Yitzhak. And he said, son, follow me. And the servants stay behind on what will become the Temple Mount. Yitzhak says to his father, Father, we have the wood of the sacrifice, but it's on my shoulders. I'm carrying the wood of the sacrifice on my shoulders. Where's the lamb? Abraham said, God will provide himself a lamb. You follow me. So Abraham led Yitzhak up to the highest peak of Mount Moriah, which is still to this day north of the city wall of Jerusalem. And so as he took him up to that highest peak, he built another altar. He bound his son to the wood of the sacrifice. He then raised his knife in obedience to the Almighty. See, when it says for burnt offering, it doesn't mean to incinerate. It just means a complete offering that cannot be undone. And as he raised his knife to plunge it into the body of his beloved son, the son of promise, the Almighty sent his angel in speaking in the first person, Avram, the Almighty knows that you will not withhold the life of your only son. Stop! Now this was not some kind of sick joke. It says that Yahovah tested Avram. Would he believe and follow him? Is the Almighty able to raise the dead? Because he knew that his son was to be his heir. This is the one. Is he hearing from the Almighty? Has he heard from him all these times? Every one of these altars he built in stone is a reality, or was I dreaming it? Did the Almighty call me by name, tell me what to do, or am I dreaming this? Am I crazy, or did he do what he said? And he said, I'm going for it. I know what I heard. I'm going to obey. And the angel stopped him. And there was a ram, a male lamb of the first year, with his horn caught in a crown of thorns, a thicket. And that ram was the substitute for the son. The male lamb was the substitute for the son. A ram which did no sin, did nothing wrong, but yet was provided as the substitute for the son. And so now we put in place a picture of a substitutionary sacrifice. And that one day we will see at Mount Moriah, where the Lamb of God, with the wood of the sacrifice on his shoulders, then answers Yitzhak's question. Father, we have the wood, it's on my shoulder, where's the lamb? And Abraham replies, God will provide himself a lamb. You follow me. See, Abraham put in place a rehearsal of messianic prophecy, of a substitutionary sacrifice for his son, which is the nation of Israel, and his sons, all who call upon his name. Join us again next week for episode 2 in the 5-part series, Passover, the Path to Freedom. This is Michael Rood bidding you shalom and peace, and I'd like to leave you with this blessing. Yivarechecha Yehovah v'yishmerecha. Yair Yehovah panav elecha v'chunecha. Yisa Yehovah panav elecha v'yisem lecha shalom. B'shem Yeshua HaMashiach sar shalom. Yehovah will bless you and keep you. Yehovah will make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. Yehovah will lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In the name of Yeshua, the Prince of Peace. Amen and amen.